Welcome back to Real Roots Radio. My name is Peyton Burdett. Super excited to be chatting with Garrett Hendricks today. What's going on, Garrett?
Not too much. Just got off working from the farm, so it's been a good day so far.
I excited to have you on the program. Excited for our listeners to get to know who you are a little bit. First and foremost, where are you from? Because I know that plays a pretty big role into this record.
Yeah, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, kind of the Seattle area, and then spent a good decade living in what's called the Snoqualmie Valley, which is kind of a river valley in between Seattle and the Cascade
Hmm.
Mountains. And so kind of beautiful foothills, rivers, lakes, and runs out to the ocean. So a really gorgeous spot to be able to kind of grow up and cut my teeth.
What's the country music scene like out there? Is
You
there
know,
much of one?
yeah, there is. It's small and relatively tight knit, but it's definitely there. And I would say kind of really started kicking off in kind of the late 2000s, kind of 2010s. Um, it definitely kind of grew out of the indie folk scene that was really booming in the 2010s. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of the uh, punk rockers and aging grunge rockers sort of sifted into kind of the Americana scene for sure. So there's a good taste of the old grunge scene, even in the country Americana scene in Seattle.
And the album that you put out, part of it is like it is kind of a rock and country record too. Was there kind of some influence there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've always kind of seen myself as a little bit of a split personality
Hmm.
between country music and rock and roll. I love acoustic music. Grew up listening to a lot of bluegrass and folk and old school country, but I also, love to plug in and really loved bands like Pearl Jam and
Hmm.
Nirvana and Bruce Springsteen was another huge one. So there's always been kind of the meld of rock and country together.
Who were some of the people that got you into the country music scene?
Early on, I had a bunch of uncles and aunts that were all musicians, and they listened to a lot of the 90s country stuff,
Hmm.
Brooks, the Dixie Chicks, and so that was kind of the earliest entry. But then, uh, as I got older and kind of learned more of my family's background in music, there's a lot of kind of the 70s era singer-songwriters, people like John Prine, Gordon
Yeah.
Lightfoot, Joni Mitchell, people like that. And then I kind of found my own voice in terms of digging deeper. And in kind of my early teens, I found Johnny Cash. And then in high school, I had a teacher that really, I knew John Prine's music, but I didn't really know who he was because
Hmm.
I grew up listening to his music kind of like as family playing his songs around the campfire. But I had a high school teacher that kind of recognized where I was going in life, and she gave me a list of John Prine songs to listen to. And so, kind of high school forward, I was listening to a lot of John Prine. So that's kind of how I found my way into country music, and now it's really listening to kind of the modern greats, Tyler Childers, Sturgill Simpson, kind of those.
Hmm. So your record out now called Northwest and Southbound. The process for this record took a couple of years, didn't it?
Yeah, it started with a couple of singles, Adrift in the American Dream and Fry an Egg, and kind of wasn't really sure if I was going to be able to make a record just because, nowadays, as independent artists, we're responsible for all facets of our career. And so finding funding without a label to make a record these days is really difficult. But I was fairly, I don't know if fortunate is exactly the right word. But I came into a little bit of a windfall. My grandmother passed kind of in the middle of those 2 years,
Hmm.
and she surprisingly left a decent sum of money to myself and to her other grandchildren. And so I was really fortunate that like that came in when it did. And like her wishes were for it to be used to kind of help all of us in whatever career
Hmm.
aspects that we kind of had. And mine being music, it made sense to kind of use that windfall to at least check this initial dream off the list of making a full length record in Nashville.
You sharing that story obviously immediately makes me think of the closing song on this record, Lonesome 27. How would you kind of describe that track?
That it was an interesting journey with that one. So I took a train tour across the country with a couple other songwriters from Nashville. We hopped on a train in Chicago and rode it all the way out to the West Coast,
Hmm.
stopping in kind of Montana and stuff. And during the course of that trip, I also knew uh, that I was going to be getting off in Edmonds, Washington, where my grandparents lived. And I knew that in getting off at the station there, I was going to be going to see my grandma in what was likely to be the last time. It ended up being the last time I saw her alive. And so as we were traveling on the train on that journey, I was thinking a lot about that and kind of being a traveling musician, there's a lot of sacrifice that goes in with that. And some of that is maybe not being there at sometimes important moments in life. And so
Hmm.
there was a kind of a tinge of regret in terms of, yes, chasing a dream, but missing out on my kind of grandma's final years on Earth. And then also just reflecting on, we were passing through a lot of the indigenous reservations uh,
Hmm.
in kind of the Western states and seeing kind of the resilience, but also the states of poverty and injustice there. It just made me think about a lot about how I can do better as an individual and how we as a collective society can do better by one another. And so that's what really inspired that song. It's really about trying to do better by people before it's too late.
Hmm. What was that song? Was it an easy one to write? Was it one that you kind of had to keep working on for months and months?
You know, it came pretty quickly. It was
Hmm.
kind of towards, we were passing, we had just played in Whitefish, Montana, and we were on the train. It's an overnight trip from Whitefish to Seattle. And it was kind of in the wee hours of that night. Um, I was kind of up and walking about the train car. And that song just kind of like very quickly the first few verses came out. And then once we got to Seattle and we're playing shows there, I was kind of tinkering with it during sound
Hmm.
checks and stuff. And by the end of that tour, I felt like I had a pretty cohesive piece. And then getting back to Nashville, started thinking about the overall arrangement and stuff. But at the time, didn't know that that was going to make the record. That was a last minute addition when
Oh, cool.
that we had the funding to go ahead and make a full record.
When I'm thinking about this album, the record opens up with a song called "Son of the River," a song where it really feels like you're representing kind of where you're from. Is there a sense of, I don't know if pride's the right word, but is there a part of you that wants to like represent your hometown? Because I mean, you traveled quite a far way just to get to Nashville.
It's funny. Washington oftentimes gets identified as, just Seattle. And I love
Hmm.
Seattle. It's where I grew up. But there's so much more than just that city. It's so much more
Hmm.
diverse. And I always was more drawn to the wilder places of the state.
Yeah.
Uh, the places that maybe people only see in, background pictures on their desktop or something like that. It really is this magical kind of Middle Earth kind of state. It's got a little bit of everything. And the people are so authentic and genuine. We talk about the Seattle freeze or the Northwesterner freeze, that
Hmm.
that's maybe not the most welcoming. But I think that's more that we are very like guarded and quiet people because we spend some time inside with the rain. But the people there, like, we don't fake things a whole lot. Uh,
Yeah.
they're really good, genuine people up in the Northwest. And uh, so much of country music and the mythos of country music is based around kind of the South. And I really wanted to represent that country music, the music of working class people, can really be found anywhere. And
Hmm.
Washington's no different. We have fishing and lumber and all kinds of different industries. And it's just, you kind of have to have a little bit of grit about you to be willing to spend so much time in a state where it rains quite a bit of the year.
The song Anthony on this record, I think you do a really good job with this track of being both personal to you, but it's also a song that is very relatable. Because I think most of us have an Anthony in our life. What has the response been to playing that song live?
That song's always been a special one live. Obviously, it's a very personal song about the loss of a childhood friend, and somebody who, quite honestly, I lost contact with in adulthood.
Hmm.
Uh, but somebody that still was, had a lot of fond memories of. And playing that live, though, it does have this kind of it's a pain that everybody has experienced. It's a type of nostalgia that I think a lot of people have
Hmm.
experienced. When you lose somebody, even if you haven't seen them in a long time, obviously all the memories and experiences that comes flooding back very quickly. And I wanted to capture that. I wanted to capture my own, experience of kind of realizing like, oh, life really is fleeting. And as I get older, it's going to continue to be more and more so. But I also wanted to capture and put myself in the shoes of the family and close friends of this person, and kind of the myriad of emotions and the complexities of grief that they're probably going through. Um, I had what I would describe as more of like an outside relationship. I was, just a friend, but for somebody who maybe was a partner or a parent or a sibling, that's different when you lose somebody like that. And I've experienced that myself. And so I was trying to kind of combine all those together. And I think it makes for a song that's live. Sometimes it's difficult to play because you see the reactions of people in the audience. And, uh, sometimes I have to kind of tune that out because it can be hard to
Hmm.
get through the song when you're seeing people having their own recollection of their own personal experience within that context of that song.
Yeah, but it's still creating such a cool and unique moment. Obviously, it's a sad song and it brings up, sad and frustrating and hard emotions. But I mean, really, that is something that's really cool about music is your ability to, as you're playing a live show, everyone kind of thinking back to their own moments in life, to thinking about their own Anthony's.
Yeah, absolutely. And my favorite experience with audience members, with fans, is when people come up and share their own story, whether it's
Hmm.
sitting at the bar and somebody comes up and yeah shares their own Anthony story. I think that's been the most like special part of my career so far.
This record, you mentioned how kind of getting funding for it and whatnot was difficult and how you weren't quite sure if it was going to happen. When I'm looking at the track list, there really is a blend of kind of like the softer, more hard-hitting songs. I'm thinking of Lonesome 27 or Anthony. There's also a lot of like fun rockin' songs. I think Fry and Egg is probably one of my favorite examples. Um, was there kind of an overall concept you were going for with this record?
Yeah, I mean it was kind of found along the way. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily a concept record in that I came in with like, oh, this is the exact direction. My producer and I kind of went through probably 20 to 40 songs,
Okay.
um, and kind of picked kind of the best out of those. But I think there was an overarching kind of message in that kind of my experience has been, life it can be very short,
Hmm.
and sometimes cruel. So it's like we should make the most of it while we can. And so there's kind of an overarching theme of that throughout the record,
Yeah.
um, basically taking the time to tell stories and be in the moment. And each of those songs kind of captures an individual moment. And also kind of touching on themes of like what it is to be chasing a dream in modern day America. Like, what does that look like for everyday people?
Yeah. We're chatting with Garrett Hendricks here on Real Roots Radio. His new record, Northwest and Southbound, is available now. Garrett, let everyone know where they can find you, your music, your tour dates, all that stuff.
Yeah, so you can check me out on my website, garretthendricksmusic.com. You can also find me on all social media platforms. Instagram is a little interesting. They don't let me use my name, so it would be
Really?
it's crazy. I don't know what it is. It would be GB and then HENDY, Hendy Songs on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, hey, Garrett, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Peyton.